All right.
Hi,
Welcome to Traci Bogan.
I'm Traci Bogan, Dreampreneur, and I work with purpose-driven women. They hire me to discover their purpose, voice, and power and create more freedom, fortune, and fun in their lives. Unfortunately, most women lack the clarity, confidence, and accountability to reach the success they truly desire. I teach them the mindset, the strategy, and the plan to be productive and achieve results. You can find us at tracibogan.com. I'm super excited to have my friend Brad Hart as a guest on the program today, and he's the head marble maker from Make More Marbles. As an experienced entrepreneur, investor, trader, advisor, and coach to people who want more in their life, Brad has mentored hundreds of entrepreneurs and investors, built a hedge fund that returned 106% net of expenses in 2013. That's incredible. And has been featured multiple times in Forbes, as well as several popular blogs such as The 4-Hour Workweek, one of my personal favorites. And his articles have been read over 500,000 times. On top of it all, he's a sought-after speaker, thought leader, and exchanges radical ideas with heavy hitters in multiple industries. After building and helping to build several successful ventures in various industries, such as trading and real estate, etc., Brad has refocused on what he loves most, which is building businesses, managing wealth, mentoring entrepreneurs, coaching incredible humans, and helping others to create abundance in their life. Let's welcome head marble maker Brad Hart. Yay!
Hi, Traci, and I hope I can live up to the hype. Jeez, that was a great bio. Thank you.
Thanks for being a guest on the show today. So what's a head marble maker? Give us a little thumbnail of your story and how you got to where you are.
I would love to. I actually just made a video about this. It's been kind of bouncing around in my head. Some people say I lost my marbles. About 4 years ago, I had an idea when I was still in the thick of things with trading. And I realized one day, I'm like, it's a zero-sum game, right? The markets aren't where value is created. It's where value is decided upon, right? It's buying and selling, supply and demand. And at any given time, we decide what something's worth, but it's not where value is created. So I wanted to get to a different part of the wealth creation cycle. I wanted to be a marble maker instead of a marble taker, if you will. So I thought of this idea of like, instead of grabbing for all the marbles like the hungry hippos, what if we could just make more marbles? And when I started to play around with this metaphor, it got more and more fun because like the infinite sandbox of creation, heat it up, twist, you got a marble, right? So you can make more marbles infinitely. And I have begun to, blog around this idea and podcast around this idea and create content, videos, everything you could think of. And the people who have taken this on as their mantra, instead of competing with each other, now they're collaborating with other people in order to win more than they ever could alone, are having their lives shifted by it. So it started as a little crazy idea I had. Some people said I lost my marbles, but now it's, worldwide. I've got people working multiple different time zones, the US, Canada, all over. We have clients all around the world. It's been incredible. And now I've had an opportunity to build and help build a lot of different businesses. And that's been the greatest reward because I truly believe, and I borrowed this from Tony Robbins, who I've done a lot of Tony Robbins work over the years. Leaders don't create more followers, they create more leaders. So those ripple effects go on forever.
Absolutely believe that. I'm also a Tony Robbins fan. In fact, I was a guest on Brad's show just last week.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that discussion. We're both fireworkers, only Brad's 4 times. I'm 1. That's a powerful statement. So what gave you the courage to break through your glass ceiling and just go for it?
So for me, Traci, I was doing the finance thing, the real estate thing, because I was living my legacy's life, if you will, right? I was living the lives of my great-grandparents and my grandparents, people who had done really well at the time, doing the things that they were doing. Those are the opportunities that were available to them. And what I realized is I wasn't living my life. I wasn't doing the things that put me into flow. So my hedge fund was very successful. As you mentioned, we did 106% in 1 year. We had a month. And by the way, I grew up relatively hand to mouth. My father was injured when I was quite young. We lived on Social Security and disability checks. So we had a month where we made $1,040,000, my partners and I, net profit.
Wow.
It was more money than I had ever seen or heard of. A lot of people would love to have a 7-figure year, let alone a 7-figure month. And, it was at that moment that I felt more disillusioned and more burned out. I'll always remember the exact moment. I was standing on top of the Gansevoort Park Hotel in New York City and, toasting my club soda to my compatriots and, celebrating our win, except I didn't feel like I won anything. I felt like I was more disillusioned because I just made all this money and I wasn't any happier. In fact, I was more miserable and depressed because my ego got everything it ever wanted, except I was unhappy and unfulfilled. And another great Tony quote, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. So I had to really step back and reevaluate my life. And I didn't end up winding down the fund until about a year and some change later. But I knew at that moment that something was going to have to shift, that this wasn't going to be the last thing I ever did. So when you think about, purpose, and you think about what you're here to do, I believe we're here to do a lot of things. Maybe we have a grander life purpose, but I believe that purposes exist for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, just like relationships or anything else. Exactly. And I wasn't so hung up on that one purpose, making money, that I wasn't able to see the forest for the trees and really move on to my next highest and best purpose. And I'm really fortunate because it gave me the background to get into a lot of the circles that I ultimately got into, because I went more people focused after that. I started building my network more. I started taking more trips. I started joining more masterminds. And that model led me to what I do now, which has been invaluable. And I wouldn't change it for the world, not just from a experience perspective, but also from I had to try a lot of things out before I really found my flow.
What would you say through all of that has been the biggest lesson that you've learned so far?
Biggest lesson I've learned so far is that you don't have to be good at everything. You don't even have to be acceptable at everything. You can fail and suck at a lot of things, but if you can find the things that you're magical at, and this is the key part, surround yourself with the people who are great at the things that are necessary but you're not good at, and let them shine, make sure they have what they need to be at the top level of their game, then magic starts to happen. Because the amount you can do, I don't care if you're the best in the world. We all love to hear the stories of Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, but that's one person, right? They might set the vision and create a vision big enough to support a lot of people. But you got to remember, there's hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people around the world, customers and employees and partners and investors, that go into making that story real. So when you think of your capacity as a human being, it's not your capacity to do things, it's your capacity to create an environment where people come together and then do things together and push forward together. So that's been the biggest thing for me, is just understanding that I'm nothing without my team, and all the credit goes to them. All I'm doing is setting the vision and making sure people have what they need to succeed.
That's amazing. So from that, what would you say, I'm going to ask a double question. What has been your biggest entrepreneurial aha, as well as your failure, your biggest failure?
Yeah, I'll talk about the failure first, because I think it's more telling, right? My very first business, I always think of this great quote. My speaking coach, Thomas Blackwell, sells Infusionsoft all over the world. He does $3.5 million a year from stage. And he always says, Brad, people will respect you for your successes, but they'll love you for your failures. Because not everybody can relate to success, but they can all relate to failure.
I agree.
So we talk about the time I failed, right? When I first transitioned into selling products online, I had a moment where I thought I really had a great idea, and I thought I'd validated it. So I had this idea I was in real estate in New York for a while, and I had this idea for a product to help people find real estate on their own without having to use a broker. A broker charges anywhere from a month to 2 months of rent in New York City, which can be thousands and thousands of dollars. So I thought, okay, for $200, I'll teach them how to do it. There'll be an online course. It'll be great. So I validated the idea by putting ads up on Craigslist, and I got tens of thousands of people come to my website. I'm like, validated, bam. Don't need to do anything else, right? So I go back to the drawing board and I, get this all together, and I order the DVDs and set up the website and hire all the people. I ended up investing like $45,000 just to realize that I couldn't compete in the way I wanted to compete. A couple things happened in a row. So Craigslist shut me down time and time again. They started blocking my IP address. I couldn't post ads. I wasn't very savvy enough to get around that. I even went to their offices. I was like, hey, I'll guarantee I'll spend $120,000 at least, $10,000 a month on ads. They don't want to hear about it because they have more of a relationship with the brokers than they do with me. So that was one. The second thing was I couldn't compete on Google with keywords, because guess what? Corcoran's willing to pay $8 a click for that keyword, because that client to them means $8, $10, $20,000 maybe on a commission. For me, it meant $200. So I couldn't outspend Corcoran or any of those other firms that were willing to pay that much. Facebook ads weren't really a thing yet. This is back in 2011. So you got to remember, what were my options really to drive traffic? I had kind of run to the end of it. I didn't know how to sell at that time. I probably could have figured something out if I kept at it, but the fundamental idea was flawed because I hadn't taken the time to validate it properly and all the way from end to end. So now what I teach is, make sure the money's there first, right? Make sure people are willing to hand you money first before you build anything, and tell them, listen, I have this idea. I think it'd be really cool. I've noticed, through my Ask campaign or whatever you want to call it, that a lot of people have this problem. I think I can solve this problem for you. And I'm willing to take a risk in charging less than I would charge so that I can solve this problem for 10 to 25 people, no more. And then from that, I'll have enough money to really build a great course. We'll collaborate together and I'll get you from one-to-one. And then the benefit is you get to work with me directly to get that result, where in the future you won't get that benefit. So you're paying less and you get more access to me. Make sense? Cool.
Yes.
That's your offer to start. Instead of, I just spent 45 grand and torched it basically. And I've lost plenty of money over the years. I've made plenty of money over the years, but there's no reason to lose that kind of money, because I could have fixed that problem for, I could have made a list of 30 people and made phone calls and fixed that problem. So that was one of the big keys. And then your first question, I just want to be reminded, please.
What was your biggest entrepreneurial
Just understanding that people are willing to pay for something if you have the right vision in place and you guarantee it and you say, listen, I've gotten this result. You tell a story, you give them the character, you give them the desire, the conflict, you take them through the hero's journey. What did you learn? And you can really get on board with that. Then they will be enrolled in that vision, ideally. And if it's right for them, they'll step up and they'll put money down in order for you to solve their problem. And again, you're giving them the benefit of the doubt. If they're not happy, you're more than welcome to give their money back. But that helps you create better products. It helps you eliminate failures better, because I could just go back to the drawing board and think of a better thing, or work with those same people that I'm already in conversation with to fix a different problem or a slightly different problem. And you're off to the races. So just this year, we've had multiple different trips that we put together. We could raise 35 grand in a couple of weeks to go to China and learn about Amazon, for example. That was a really great trip. And I learned a ton and met a lot of great people. And now we're doing Amazon stuff. So it's really fun, and that's a way to get into things without having to put up a ton of money, hire a bunch of coaches, worry about a bunch of overhead. And it's risk averse, which I love, right? You're not losing in order to learn, which they pay money in mistakes instead of just doing it the right way to game with. And you get the benefit of all these other people that want to learn too, right? This is, one person in the world that wants to learn how to do Amazon and sell on Amazon or sell online. So, hey, now we get to benefit all these other 52 people or whatever that came with us, and they all get to learn as well.
So Brad, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
I think any entrepreneur who, says keywords. I just had lunch with a friend yesterday. We went surfing for my birthday. And
happy birthday. I didn't know it was your birthday.
Thank you. I turned 32 yesterday. So my friend Kirsten and David and I, we went surfing, and afterwards we had lunch. And Kirsten, I hadn't, I just met her recently. I hadn't really asked her what she was working on. She told me she's had this new course, and, she said she was this far along and all this stuff. And I just asked her, I'm like, have you sold any yet? And she's like, what do you mean? It's not finished yet. I'm like, aha. So I described that process. I just said to her, and I was just like, listen, you can do it either way you want. Like, I just trust me. I've been down this road where you go in the lab somewhere and 6 months later you come out with something that nobody wants to buy, and it's heartbreaking and it's a waste of time. I'd rather just have your feelings hurt a little bit now and not waste 6 months. So that was the biggest aha for me. It's just that new system of being able to collaborate with your audience to create what they actually want, need, and desire versus trying to figure it out, because nobody's that smart, trust me.
Where were you when I was starting my business? I made those same exact mistakes you're talking about right now, every single one of them. And you want to know why? Like you, I didn't believe I could afford a coach. I didn't believe in the investment or the cost. I'm sorry. I was looking at a cost at the time instead of an investment. And you and I are both into the world of personal development, and we both invest in ourselves, and now we understand the value. But imagine how much time and effort and energy and expense we could have both saved ourselves had we have known from the start.
Absolutely. And the right people can save you so much in mistakes. I can count hundreds of thousands of dollars that I've paid in tuition, quote unquote, to the marketplace to figure out what is not right, when I could have just went to the source. And for a very small amount of money or something in trade or helping them build their business, I could learn from the best and ultimately accelerate my success.
Exactly. The biggest excuse that I hear from people is I don't have the time and I don't have the money to make the investment in working with a coach or a mentor. And I'm sorry, you can't afford not to. So you hit the nail on the head with, I wish I found someone like you to walk me through those steps when I started my business. And hopefully, did you say her name is Kirsten?
Kirsten, yeah. Wonderful lady.
Hopefully she'll seize your advice and learn sooner rather than later. So speaking of personal development and Tony Robbins and so forth, who are some other people who inspire you? And do you work with a mentor? Do you work with a coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I'm always hiring mentors, coaches in various areas of my life, everything from health to, there's three big ones, right? There's health, wealth, and relationships. And
Yes.
as soon as you focus a lot of energy into one or the other, like the third one tends to lag. So like right now I have 4 index cards I taped on my wall right here. And I'm kind of looking at them all day. Is like, what are my health goals? What are my wealth goals? And what are my, what do you call it? Health, wealth, relationships goals,
Relationship.
right? And then on the back, on the side I'm actually looking at, so I can look at the goal if I want, I flip it up. But more importantly is, what are the habits that I need to form consistently to make that a reality, right? Because here's the key, right? You don't start with reality and say, oh, I hate reality. You got to go back to what you're valuing, what you're believing, what the beliefs lead to the thoughts lead to the words lead to the actions lead to the habits, and consistent habits create reality, right? So if you really want to change what you're doing and what you're getting, you got to go back to what you're valuing and believing. That's where it starts. And then ultimately modeling or getting coached is a way to borrow that belief or borrow that sense of certainty from somebody who's already closed the gap for themselves, and they can take you there as well. So I always tell clients now, like, don't just take my word for it. Try what I'm saying to do without any judgment for this amount of time, without judging it, without saying I'm not going to do it. Just commit to doing it every day for this amount of time. And you'll see a result. I promise you, that's going to happen. And then you'll have the evidence to create the confidence, and the confidence creates more evidence, and it's a virtuous cycle.
Yes.
Instead of never getting started in the first place, borrow the belief from me. I believe it's possible because I've done it, right?
That's advice.
You don't
Yes.
know all the pieces, right? All you need to do is model success, and success leaves clues, as again Tony Robbins loves to say.
Yes.
He's a really smart guy. Check him out if you haven't. I wish I did earlier. Trust me. I wish I went to college, to Tony instead of college sometimes.
So did I. So did I. Absolutely.
So, for me, like, I am always getting coached, and I have some wonderful coaches, Preston, JP, Adam, Dave, Ryan, even my clients want to coach me sometimes just to get more under their belt because they're getting started, and they're like, Brad, let me coach you. You'd think it would be really fun to work on and give you a new perspective. I love that kind of stuff. Like, I can learn something from everybody. Everybody's got a different set of skills, and I'm grateful and fortunate to have clients that have ridiculous skill sets in some areas. I mean, we're talking veterans, and we're talking entrepreneurs, we're talking captains and leaders of industry of both sexes, which makes what I do, that much better because now I'm cross-pollinating between industries. I really believe, I really live that in the sense that I talk to everybody, right? I might focus on my ABC, my Amazon, my blockchain, and my contribution. Those are my ABCs. That's my lane, but I'm talking to everybody, and I can derive value and good ideas from any industry and then cross-pollinate them with whatever I'm working on. And then you win faster because you're getting better ideas faster into the marketplace. Does that make sense?
Your ABCs. I love that. What a great
Yeah.
motto that is. Brad, what books have influenced your ideas and your thoughts the most?
I would say the book that changed my life for the better forever was a book called Abundance by Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler. Stephen Kotler and Peter Diamandis have lots of books, but that was the book that started it all. I read it on a road trip from San Francisco to New York before I started my hedge fund in 2011-ish or maybe 12. And it's a book that's still 40 years ahead of its time, and it's that old. It's a book about the future, about how we as humans are trained to think, or wired really to think linearly and locally. But the world we live in is global and exponential, right? So we're not trained. We have to retrain ourselves. We have to update the OS to think globally and exponentially. So it's not just me talking to you. It's me talking to you, and we record it and we put it on a podcast, and now millions of people can listen to it around the world, right? It's that promotional aspect. It's that being able to affect and touch more people's lives, ultimately having the systems in place to be able to add more value to those people. And all wealth creation is value times leverage, right? If you get enough value to one person, you can leverage that up to 1 million people if you want to, if you have the right systems in place. So really understanding that was a huge value add for me. And there's still stuff in that book that's coming to pass that it's like, if you want to hit a moving target, which the future is, it's a moving target. If you want to hit a moving target, I learned this in skeet shooting, you got to lead it. You can't shoot at it, right? You got to shoot ahead of it, because when the shot catches up and the pigeon or the bird or the clay target comes up, yeah, there they are, right? They're meeting in the middle. So as a leader, you got to be ahead of things. If you want to be ahead of blockchain right now, you got to be a few years ahead of it, right? You got to be in there digging around and seeing what the opportunities are. And there's a lot of opportunities. I can see a lot of them, but I have to be focused and laser focused on the ones that make the most sense for me. And, again, you got to think, okay, well, what would I really like to affect and change in the world? I have a big vision for the world. I want to change the way people think about resources and incentives and economics. even the best economists will agree that economics is like 5 years behind the times. It's the best we know about human decision making 5 years ago, except guess what? New miracle technology is coming out every single day, which are allowing people to make different decisions. They're still the same people, but now we live in a global exponential world. We have supercomputers in our pockets that didn't exist 10 years ago.
Exactly.
Years ago, I'd be able to look inside you without cutting you open. You'd be like, you're crazy. Now we use PET scans, CT scans every day. Pretty soon we're going to be replacing organs. We're going to have robots, AI. The future is going to look a lot different than today. So if you have that same linear local thinking that we're wired to have, I think that's necessary for sanity sometimes to have that linear local community. But in business and in value adding, forget it. I mean, you could change the future globally and exponentially with a simple vision.
Have you read Millionaire Fastlane, M.J. DeMarco?
I have not.
It's one of the books that was a turning point for me. Incredible. I just read it for the second time a couple of weeks ago. Are you a Brendan Burchard fan?
I like Brendan. Yeah, I haven't really dug too deep into his stuff, but all my friends rave about him. They're always telling me to come Expert Secrets. I just haven't jumped there yet.
He's got a new book coming out. It comes out at the end of, I believe, September. He spent 3 years researching the most productive, I can't, it's something like Success Habits or something like that, the most successful, productive people in the world. And he said the research of 3 years almost killed him. And
Wow.
But just him sharing some productivity hacks and tips. I know you have some of that. And at the end, I'm wondering if I'm putting you on the spot right now. I know we didn't talk about this, but I'm hoping that you'll be able to share some productivity hacks or tips or something with the audience here. So let me just ask you a couple more questions here. How do you handle your obstacles and your roadblocks?
So obstacles and roadblocks, I really love to think of challenges. So we talked about creating reality. That was one thing. Another thing I really believe in is desire, inspire, transpire. All right. So desire, these words all have meaning, right? So desire is of the Father. That's what it really means. It's like, it's a religious term. It means of God or of the Father. It's a cause set in motion, if you will. Mm-hmm. And then inspiration means in spirit, right? So if you have a desire, that's your what. If you have inspiration, that's your why. Your what and your why are most of the way there. And then it's your goal is to match the law of attraction with the law of action. You need to make it transpire in the real world, right? So you have this big vision and you want to create it. So for me, that's been a really interesting framework for me. It's like getting really, really clear on what and why, and then the how shows up. And it shows up as a function of, is my vision clear? Am I listening to the little feathers, right? I'll just tell a quick story to ground this.
Great.
I was in Marco Island, Florida, and I was attending an event called Life and Wealth Mastery. And we did the whole cleanse and everything. It was like day 6 or 7, and we're doing the wealth part. And this guy, Scotty, is a facilitator, great guy from Gold Coast or Sydney, I believe, in Australia. And he's just fun and gregarious. He tells this great story about how life, when you're off track slightly, it'll give you little feathers, just little taps, Tracy. Just, hey, you're off track just a little bit. And you can ignore the feathers. And one day life's going to turn up the volume. It's going to say, oh, and you're going to hit with a brick. And you're like, what the heck happened to the, well, I got hit with a brick. What is this about? And you can ignore the bricks too, but one day life's going to get upset and it's going to be like, nope, you're going to listen this time and back truck, right? So feathers, bricks, and trucks. So here I am. And my whole thing at the time was I was really in my head a lot, and I was having trouble really just staying in my heart where the capacity was. And I didn't know this at the time, but when you're in your head, you're dead. So I was like really playing with that. And I took my little beach cruiser during one of the breaks and I head back to the Airbnb where we're staying. It's a beautiful, bright, shining day in Marco Island, and it's nice out and there's birds chirping and sun shining, and for no reason at all or any reason you can pick, I was in my head, and I'm just going along in my head, thinking about whatever, getting down on myself or whatever, who cares. And I go to cross the street and I think I make eye contact with the driver about to make the right hand turn, but there's a little bit of glare on the windshield. I didn't quite make eye contact with him, and I go to cross the street and he makes the right hand turn and runs me over and runs the bike over and crushes the bike and knocks me into traffic and all these cars.
Oh my God.
On me, and luckily stopped in time, but I could have died. It was a really scary moment.
Wow.
And I got away with a couple scuffed up knees and I was fine. But when I looked at the truck that had just hit me, in the back, it was filled with paving stones or bricks. So I literally got hit by a truck full of bricks. So I clean myself up. I go back to the conference and I'm getting patched up by the medic. One of the senior leaders, still a friend to this day. And Scotty walks by and he says, what the heck happened to you? I said, Scotty, I've been thinking a lot about the trucks and the bricks. He's like, oh yeah, it's a great metaphor. I'm like, not a metaphor, Scotty. There's actual trucks and bricks hitting people out there.
Right.
Instantaneous universal feedback. So from that moment forward, I always made sure that I was living in my heart and not my head. And when I'm in my head, it does happen from time to time. I'm getting better habits, but I'll just get hurt a little bit. Like I'll stub my toe or I'll whack my elbow on something or I'll catch it on the door, and it'll just remind me that, hey, pay attention to the feather. So when I'm hitting a roadblock or resistance in life and it's not flowing,
Mm-hmm.
tie this all together. It just means I need to take a step back and listen to what life is really telling me, right? I was going down the road just recently with all these partnerships that just weren't really getting it done. And what I realized is I had to take control. I had to step up and say, no, I don't need anybody else's help to do this. I have all the resources and people on my team already.
Yep.
I can, right? And just, walk away from these partnerships that have been kind of a drain and a lot of infighting and just a lot of wasted energy. Not because they're bad or wrong. It's because I've outgrown it, right? And if you're staying where you are, as opposed to growing, you're not screwing just yourself because you're not growing. You're screwing the person that could be stepping into your place to learn what you learned and have mastered. You're screwing the people who you could be serving at the highest level.
Exactly.
And, that's 3 times that you're screwing people, right? Yourself, the person who could step in, and the people that could be served by you stepping up. So I've got this, and I'm always looking at it. It says step up on it, and I've worn it for years. So
I like that. That's the 1 + 1 = 3 factor. And you and I, we were talking last week, and I shared with you, I just went through the same quasi breakup through some partnerships and some business dealings. And it's really about being mindful on the energy that others are showing up to your project with, because that energy coming out of them adds the energy, positive or negative, to the project as well. So it's important to be mindful on who you're surrounding yourself with and who you're partnering up with, just energetically, and being like-minded that way. So Brad, what's your best success habit that you can share with us?
Oh God. So I would say do less. That's going to sound crazy.
Please share. That's not what I was
Yeah.
expecting you to say.
Yeah. So I love that be more, do more, give more philosophy. But what I'm learning now is that there's a time for hustle, and that's early on in your career. That's when you're like trying things out, trying to figure it out, just getting out there. And that's a habit that you need to be able to form, because hustle in certain circumstances is great. Like being able to pull an all-nighter or work really hard on something is great until you get really good. And then you have to play with the idea of, wait, I have more capacity when I'm taking care of myself. I have more capacity when I'm flowing. I have more capacity when I'm in my strengths. So you start to graduate from hustle, and hustle's still there, but it's only one tool. Now you need to learn how to persuade better, how to influence better, how to lead better. And that's where flow comes in. Is like, I had this hustle, call it a hammer, but when you start using every tool as a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. You got to step back and say, well, this problem isn't a nail. This is that problem. And I need to use the least amount of energy to get the most amount of impact. And then from that place, you can do more with less. So I would say maybe come back to yourself, get really clear on the what and the why. And then when you're thinking about the how, think about the outcome, right? Think about what the thing it is that you want to achieve, and then take away all the superfluous stuff that's not going to achieve it, or that, the one thing that'll take care of all the other things or make them irrelevant, if that makes sense. So I'll just give an example real quick. So again, I was telling you about the index cards. I have 3 areas in my life: health, wealth, and relationships. If it doesn't fit on an index card, I'm not focused on it right now. And then when I make my action item list, I might have, 90-day goals or 120-day goals or whatever. But what's really important is 3 things a day. And then I do those 3 things first thing, they're front and center. And as long as I do those 3 things, I'm all set up. I spend the first 3 hours of my day getting into state, getting exercise, taking care of my body, just journaling, meditating, whatever I'm going to do. The next 3 hours is just knocking out those 3 things. And then as long as they're high impact and they move the ball down the field, great. Next 3 hours of my day is, whatever it is, right? That I have different days of the week for different things. Sometimes it's podcasts, sometimes it's catching up, sometimes it's sales, sometimes it's booking things. I have a lot of team and support now, but it used to be when I was first starting out, I didn't have any of that. So I had to split my time up, because the more you can focus on a particular type of task and flow and stay in that flow, and the less distractions you have, the more you can really leverage. So, that would be my biggest productivity hack, is just focus on the things that are usually the scariest.
Mm-hmm.
To what you're feeling, because those are the things that are going to make you grow. So when you talked about the obstacle earlier, I think one last point of that is the obstacle is the way. I have a friend named Ryan Holiday. I've written for his Forbes column before. He's written a lot of great books, young guy, super successful, studying under Robert Greene. And he always talks about how the obstacle is shaping you, right? You have that desire, but you can't have that desire until you become the person for whom that shows up effortlessly.
Exactly.
So the obstacle is the thing that's going to create the challenge that you need to become the person you need to be. And it's not until you master that the thing will show up, and it'll show up effortlessly. And now you're in a new place.
I agree. Pardon me, I have a bee on me.
No worries.
My
What's
last
left?
my
You
last
done?
question for you is, it's crawling on my foot, is what is your best advice for someone either feeling stuck where they are now or someone just getting started on their new journey? And maybe that's a double question, but
Yeah.
what do you got for us?
So if you're doing nothing, do anything. Just start doing things
Hey,
and
I
listen to
like
yourself,
that.
right? Do anything at all. Like just be of service. Go build a house, go travel, go do something. Just get out there and help other people. Because the second you stop focusing on yourself and what you need, life opens up to you in ways you can never imagine. And you
Wow.
can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them going back. And if you're doing things and they're just not working for you, listen to what life is telling you, and then listen to that voice and take a different action. Right? If it's not working, change it. If you're not getting the results you want, change what you're doing. Change your approach. Keep changing your approach. You tried that. You tried this. You tried that. You tried that. Okay, cool. Keep trying. You're going to find something that clicks. And then the trick is, once it clicks, do more of that thing, less of all the other things, and keep going down that road. But if you're doing nothing, just do anything. Start, right? Start whatever lights you up. Start doing that. Whatever's self-serving, try to leave that aside for a while, because that's not the place to be. Anytime I'm getting miserable, depressed, and it happens, right? I
Hmm.
think everybody times. I start focusing on others and their needs. And if I can fulfill other people's needs, I get out of my own head long enough to feel good. And then I get momentum again.
Right. Brad, thank you so much for all these incredible pearls of wisdom. Truly appreciate your time and your expertise. Do you have anything to share for us? I'm hoping you'll share a productivity hack or a tip, or I notice you have a tip sheet. I know I'm totally putting you on the spot right now. Is there
No,
anything
no, I'd
that
be happy to.
you share?
So,
And where can we find you?
yeah, so I'll make a special link. It's at makemoremarbles.com. That's MakeMoreMarbles.com/Traci, Traci. Go to makemoremarbles.com/Traci and you'll get all my goodies. We're going to have a productivity hack cheat sheet. We're going to have a bunch of podcasts that you can check out, all free gear, all kinds of free cool stuff, to increase your productivity, triple your productivity. Join the mailing list. We mail every day. You don't have to read it all, but it's all valuable stuff. And we get tons of wonderful notes back all the time about stories that we share, of success stories. It's just a really inspirational place to be. And we'd love to have you in the marble making team, because we have plenty of marble takers in the world, but the marble makers are what's going to create the future.
And I'm an official marble maker.
Yes, you are. I love it. Thank you, Traci.
Thanks so much for everything, Brad, and hope our paths cross again soon. You can find him again. One more plug for your site.
Sure. MakeMoreMarbles.com/Traci is all the free gifts. And if you guys want to reach out to me on Facebook, I'm very accessible there. It's Facebook.com/Brad Hart, BRADHART, one word.
And there you have it, from the head marble maker, Brad Hart from Make More Marbles. I'm Traci Bogan, Dreampreneur. You can find me at tracibogan.com, and that's Traci with an I, BOGAN.com.
Okay.